My name is Linda Bratten. I am the creative force behind Linda Bratten Creations. Imagine that one. But I'm also a national Baby Lock educator. And what that means is I'm going to share my love of Baby Lock products, accessories, and machines. And tonight we are focusing on machines with those accessories or feet that can make your piecing super, super great. That's what I'm here for. So I've been quilting quite a while. In fact, the birth of my first child 30 plus years ago has motivated me to get into quilting. And so I was self-taught at that time and I have learned so much along the way. One of the things that I have learned is the importance of the right presser foot for your sewing machine. Now, I'm going to be honest with you folks. The right presser foot can make an average or okay seamstress or sewer be fabulous. So creatives, that's what I'm sharing with you tonight are all my secret hints and tips to getting these row houses pieced together. Here we go. We're going to go ahead and change the camera so I can show you what my row houses are going to look like. Ta-da! Told you, think beachside. This is my set of row houses. I'm probably not going to make a tote, so this is going to be probably a little wall hanging, but I think they're charming coastal ones. And check it out, folks. We're going to be adding these decorative stitches to our row houses. We're going to be doing some soffit treatment here to give it that cute little painted lady look. I think that's what they're called, the Victorian ones. I did some texture inside and I added chimneys. I also did the sashings. Notice here I did some flower boxes on a couple of them. I put some elliptical fan lights and I added some curtains in some of the windows. I even did little dormer windows for the attic, just and a front door window. Some of the things that I thought we needed. Now you're going to say, where are the door handles? I'm looking at putting beads and or buttons. So I think that's going to be super, super fun. And then check it out. Everybody has a front little garden of some sort. Now, here's something that I learned. When you're choosing the color of your houses, you may not be able to add flowers unless you get a super contrasting thread. I noticed, okay, I'm going to give you a little secret here. There is a yellow flower right in there, but because of the fabric I've chosen, you don't see it. But anyhow, there's a lot of things you can do with this, but I'm super, super excited on how we use those decorative stitches to come out with this. And I think this is going to be a really sweet little wall hanging one. So some things I'm going to share with you today. First of all, we're going to talk a little bit about how to match up a plaid, because of course I use plaids here. We're going to talk about how to get that plaid on the top portion and the bottom portion of your pieced block. And these are all machine pieced. And then we're going to talk a little bit about doing the roof lines here, and then just some basic color selection, and of course, getting that 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. All right. So I'm super excited. I'm seeing lots of hearts. I'm so excited. So yes, this is what we are doing. Now, I did it just slightly different. I did not put the grass on, but when I pieced my houses, I pieced them individually because I wasn't sure how they were going to look together. So when you go to the link, and if you don't have the pattern, you're going to want to get the pattern. It is a free download from Wyndham Fabrics. It looks like this. It's the row house tote. They used these lovely little houses to make a tote. So you would actually take this row house of 4 and take it ×2, so you have a front and a back for your tote. So it's a little more work, but it certainly can be done. In fact, I am one of many Baby Lock educators that are all going to do our own little spin. So if you just wanted to do a house with every Baby Lock educator, I think that would be a fabulous way to showcase this event. All right. So, hey, Jacqueline, thanks for joining. And Sheila, oh my goodness, everybody's joining in. Elaine, thank you. All right. So inside here, you're going to see very, very lots of details. I love this. And of course, I printed it in black and white, but you can print it in anything. One of the things you want to make sure when you're printing this, it is a PDF. Make sure that you print it at 100% or actual size, because on the third page, you're going to get the measurements that you need. And of course, I mark up my patterns. That's how I know where I'm at. But on this back page, this is where that 100% or accurate or actual makes a difference. Because if this doesn't measure 1 inch by 1 inch, your template, which is here, can make a difference. It can be distorted, and you don't want that. We want a pretty little peak to our houses. All right, so I'm just going to open this up, and we're going to talk just a little bit about this. Now, believe it or not, folks, I made this all out of scrap fabric. And so I think this is a great way to use up some of those pieces that we tell ourselves we're always saving for that special purpose. Well, here it is, guys. All right, I think that would be super, super fun. So let's get started. You're going to be cutting the main part of the house, which is the body of the house. And I worked with stripes and plaids and polka dots, believe it or not, and a gingham. So you're going to want to know, first of all, with your plaid or stripe, is it printed on grain? All right. And what I mean by that is, do the stripes and the plaid run with or parallel to your selvages? That's going to be real important because sometimes printed fabric is not always straight. Do I need to repeat myself? Sometimes printed fabric is not always straight. Sometimes woven fabric can be stretched off grain. So before I cut any of my pieces out, I actually saturate them with the starch. And I just use a spray starch. It can be like best press or anything. I let it set for just a little bit because I want it to absorb into the fabric. And then I use a dry iron and I iron it. Now you want to leave it set for just a little bit because if you touch a hot iron to a starched piece of fabric, it's going to fuse to the bottom of the iron and create a panic. It's also going to create a like a burnt starch to the bottom of your iron. It washes off, yes, but you can smell it, and it's just not very much fun. All right. So in order to get your second story or the peak of your roof to be lined up with the body of your house, what I advise you to do is to take your fabric and find the plaids and how they match. Now this one looks really, really close. And I line it up just like this so that you can see I have that plaid continuing onto the next piece because like this may have been a piece from one and this may have been a piece from another. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my triangle here, and I'm going to make sure that the top of my triangle, which this is really nice that it has the letter A on it, so I can actually see where it is. Now I may want to actually start this on one of the horizontal lines so that it is even, but I'm going to move this back and forth when it's lined up to the house or the base piece so that I can center it, and then I'm just going to move it up to the next printed line here. Then I can do one of two things. I can actually pin it and totally cut around it. But those of you that know me know I absolutely adore my rotary cutter. And I hope you can see this. Let me see. Maybe I can slide it down just a hair. Sometimes what I can see and what you see are two different things. All right. So I've got my pattern on here. And I just want to tell you this. Sometimes pattern designers are very specific as to which way this the template goes. So if this is a template that I've traced onto template things, I may actually put an arrow where the up is or where the top of this template is so that I can actually see it and I'm not going to invert it accidentally because that can make a difference because sometimes they're not always perfectly mirrored left to right. And then I just come in here with my ruler and I just cut away what I don't need. And if I had this on a spinning mat, I would just spin it around because, of course, we want to make sure that we're doing proper body mechanics. And you can't see me here, but I am standing up because I don't want to cut this sitting down. That's a surefire way for me to cut my fingers or to have it distort. And I'm just relining it up because I moved it as I spun it around. And I must have little bits of paper. Maybe I'm shaving this and I didn't want to do that. But I will tell you this, I am using one of these Quilter Select rotary cutters, and I love because I can just touch this button and boom, touch the button and boom, my blade is exposed and I can touch it again and it can cover it. The other thing about that is real easy if I have a left-handed person that is going to be borrowing my ruler or my rotary cutter. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this. This is very stiff. When I say starch that baby, I mean starch it. And the reason I say starch it, it's because right now, this side and this side is what we call a bias. And that means stretch in the sewing world, okay? And if I were to not starch this, my fabric may actually do a wave, okay? But that starch helps maintain those sharp lines and the integrity of this piece. So by starching this, I'm doing myself a favor to help get a really great cut. And notice this is where I had it laid, and this is going to be the top. Now, in the piecing instructions, she has you sew all four of your house bodies together. Well, I didn't do that, okay, obviously, because I wasn't sure how I wanted to do the actual roof line or the soft, what I call the soffit. And I was like auditioning different colors. Now, I will tell you this, they tell you to cut these roof lines. Let's see, what was it? They want this 7 1/8 by 4 1/2. Michelle Hall did a live and she cut hers at 5. I would go with the 5 inch. So if you're taking notes, make your soffit or they call it roof trim, make that 5 inches because that's going to give you a little bit of wiggle room. Plus, it'll give you something to trim off. So that's like one of my first, other than the, when cutting with the template, make sure you get that printed the right size, get it so that you have the top of that template in the right direction, especially if you've got like a directional print, that's going to make a big difference. But then the other thing is, when you can, I always like to cut mine a smidge bigger. So like if I'm doing half square triangles and I want them to end up 3-inch half square triangles, you know that you add 7/8 of an inch to your measurement, right? That gives you the seam allowance plus the diagonal to cut those half square triangles. So 7/8 is a tricky thing to cut, and to cut it so it's square is really tricky. So if I'm cutting a half square triangle, and for those of you that don't know what a half square triangle is, it's a square that you cut in half diagonally, okay? So if I'm doing that, instead of cutting a 3 7/8, I will just cut a 4-inch and then trim it down so it's a 3-inch square after I've sewn it together. I think that just gives you more accuracy in the end and yes, there's a tad bit of waste, but for me, I don't call it a waste, I call it a tool. All right. So here's where that little bit extra is just a 1/2 inch extra, because I believe it was just going to be 4 1/2 inches. We take it up to 5. So what this is going to do is this is going to allow me now to give a little bit of wiggle room. I'm just going to make sure that I definitely have a little bit past here and a little bit past here when I sew this on. So that's like another hint here. When you're doing this, make sure that you have that little bit of extra here on this piece, because that's going to make it so nice to trim this up and have it work. So let's take this on over to the machine and let's get set up. So here we are at the setup, and I'm going to have to hug the machine so that you can see everything. All right, so we are actually in the queue or the quilting menu. So if I was to go here, that would be our utility stitches. We've got some of our, what I call the standard or those continuation of the utility stitches with a lot of our heirloom type things. You might have some feathers, those type of things that we normally use. Some of our stretch stitches are in there. Then we've got some of our decorative stitches, or what we call blackwork heirloom stitches there too. We've got our our buttonholes and our button sew on. We've got in Solaris, you've got the directional stitches. Did you guys know some machines sew in a diagonal? If you ever make bags, you're going to want to know this. And then you have the Q, which is your quilting. You also have your specialty and your tapering stitches now, especially in the Altair Altair and Solaris. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about my choices. So I can do a center justified stitch here, which is really easy. And that's really good where it's going to make a difference where the needle hits on the presser foot. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But Q1 is your center justified. Q2 is also a center, but it can be moved either to the left or to the right using the L or R, left or right shift. What that does for you folks is it moves that needle closer to the outside edge of your presser foot, giving you a scant seam allowance. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. And then, of course, you've got the left justified, which takes it all the way over here. And that's a really good one if you're sewing with super thin fabrics. Now, I'm not going to say never, but there are some quilting fabrics that are very, very thin. And so you want to keep that in mind. The sound is muffled. Okay, can you hear me now, Cindy? Give me thumbs up if you can hear me. Because what happens is I turn, I look at the screen. So I apologize for that. Oops, you know what else though? I might have put that on top. Is it better? Can you all hear me now? Give me a thumbs up or a love or something. Let me know that you can hear me. Oh, I'm hoping you can hear me. I was having some trouble with the internet earlier. Okay, you can hear me. All right. So when you look at your stitches, you're going to want to know if you can move. And of course, if you can move will be dependent on which presser foot you choose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with a center justified stitch, okay? Just a center justified straight stitch. And we're going to go and I'm going to share my screen so you can get a close-up of what I'm working with here. I have a variety of presser feet set out for you. Now, I do have what I call my decorative stitch faceplate or needle plate on. All right. That means I could do any kind of zigzag with this. This is the one that is probably on your machine when you get it out of the box. It allows you to do all your decorative stitches. As I was telling you before, the needle plate here is the open or the decorative stitch needle plate. The needle plate here, oops, and some of your machines have this, some do not. I hope you can, maybe it's better if I hold it over here. Do you see this hole? This is the straight stitch only needle plate. And what this needle plate does is this helps to support where we have this opening here. This one does not have the opening, so it supports our stitches. When would this be important? Let's say we're piecing angles like those half square triangles, or maybe we have 45-degree diamonds, or like today we have this 60-degree equilateral triangle roof, okay? It's going to be real important to support it. Now, another hint about your machine, when you change your faceplate, and if those of you that don't have one of our upper end machines, you may have screw holes here that you have to unscrew to get the needle plate to change. The Baby Lock Solaris has a lever here, and if I was to pop this plate will pop up and I can change it out. Can we use the straight stitch plate with the scant 1/4 of an inch needle placement? Now remember, when I said scant, we're moving that needle over to the right or to the left. You cannot, because you take it out of that center justification. So you have to be able to be in the center only, okay? Now that being said, you have options with presser feet to help you out, okay? So many of us are familiar with what I call the 1/4 of an inch presser foot, and I'm trying to get it so you can actually see it. I love this presser foot because it's got etched lines that can help us out to be fabulous piecers, okay? So you're going to notice first, it only allows you to have a center justification, just like that center justified or single straight stitch needle plate. Hey, Sherry, thank you for joining. So what this does, this one actually also has a metal guide on the side so that the edge of your fabric can run right along in here. This is great if you are doing consistently straight piecing and you're just going to be feeding it super fast. Think Jelly Roll Race. This is a great foot for this. Now, I just want to talk just a little bit about this presser foot and these etched lines. So the one right here that is straight across from that opening, that is where your needle is going to hit. Right over here, it's 1/4 of an inch. So think about this. If I was stitching to the edge of my quilt to sew on my binding and I wanted to stop at 1/4 of an inch, I would make sure the edge of the quilt landed there. Let's say I'm setting in a seam like a Lemoyne star and I wanted to set in a triangle. This is another really great way to use this presser foot to be able to get an accurate stopping point. Now, the little one here in the middle is 1/8. And then, of course, the one above it is 1/8. And then the one over here is, once again, 1/4 of an inch. So this presser foot has guidelines on it. Now, you may have this 1/4 of an inch presser foot without the metal guide bar. It would look something like this. Now, this one, let's see if I can hold it so you can see it. Maybe it's better if you can see it right down here. It actually has red lines. It's an acrylic foot that I absolutely love. And let me tell you, I love this presser foot when I am doing foundation paper piecing, because there's no metal bar to catch, but yet I've got this little tunnel or funnel here of a line that I can follow right along my foundation paper piecing line. Love it. Now, another presser foot that we'd want to use are single hole or center justified stitch is what we call our straight stitch foot. Now, a lot of people think, oh, that's only a dressmaker foot. What you don't realize about this foot is that it's got little etched notches on the sole. I hope you can see this. And what this does, even though we can't move our needle, guys, we can run the edge of our fabric on one of these notched edges, and that gives us that scant 1/4 of an inch seam. I'm trying to hold it and I'm talking. I'm not very good at this. Can't sew and I can't talk, and I can't hold a foot and get excited about it and talk. But those little notches here at the toe of the foot, that's going to give you placement guides. All right. And the neat thing about this is whether you're using this side over here, this is actually a 1/4 of an inch wide. This is a little bit less. Oops. This is actually to the right is a 1/4 of an inch. Over here is less than an 1/8. And what this foot is also really good for, now that I'm coming back here to this 1/4 of an inch patchwork foot, this is also a really good foot for top stitching. So if you are a garment person, there is a use for it. Now, our standard, what we call J foot, is also a really good foot to do that scant 1/4 of an inch. Once again, you're going to get that clear acrylic. I don't know if you can see it. There's a little bit of an acrylic right here. You see a little glare by it? That acrylic adds pressure over those feed dogs in that area and helps feed those areas in. But because you have a wide opening for that zigzag stitch, you can use that feature, that left, right, or your width feature to move your needle over to get that scant 1/4 of an inch. Now, next week, you're going to want to look for your monogram or N foot. And I love this foot, but the difference between the J foot and the N foot is you're going to see that N foot has a channel. That's this one right here, has a channel for all of that built up, beautiful decorative stitches to flow right underneath it with no resistance. Our J foot or our standard foot does not have that. It is smooth, so it can continue to add pressure to get that fabric to feed through. So the other thing that you can do, and those of you that have a digital dual feed, this is a walking foot on steroids, know that you can engage it and you can disengage it. So you can engage it and use it to assist you in your piecing. Once again, there are toe marks or sole marks here. I hope you can see it. They're painted in red, and they can be used to help you visually guide and feed your fabric through. It also comes, and let me show you. All you have to do is lift it up and it unsnaps, and you can snap on your 1/4 of an inch foot. I love this because once again, this 1/4 of an inch foot, notice you've got that big opening here, so you can use that left-right adjustment and scoot your needle on over, and then you've got this lovely guide here to help run the fabric right alongside of it. So your digital dual feed with this 1/4 of an inch toe or sole is going to give you a really accurate 1/4 of an inch that's scant. And not only that, because it's got this lovely belt-driven feature here with this walking foot. It's not a walking foot, it's a digital dual feed foot. That continuous contact with your fabric is going to help feed it through your machine. Now remember, you do have to plug it in, and it's going to tell you what stitches work and don't work with this feature. But boy, what a nice piece, what a nice feature to have. Okay. And then, of course, our dynamic foot that I talked about on one of our Facebook Lives prior is another really great one. And I'm going to be honest with you, for tonight's project, as long as you are consistent with your piecing, you're going to get a fairly accurate piece. The one time that you're, if it has to be scant or no scant, is really dependent upon if you're doing like star points. I think then you're probably more prone to have to want to make sure that you're doing a scant or non-scant. Now, I have a gray colored thread, and I think maybe a beigey gray I call it a beigey gray. There are two thread colors that I usually piece with. One is a gray, a light gray, and one is a light beige. And those seem to piece any color of fabric. I know it's weird, but it's true. So the front's one, so I'm going to take my front and do right sides together. But since this is a triangle and I can't see where I'm stitching, I'm going to scoot it on up. And remember, I want to leave a little space at the top and a little space at the bottom. What that's going to allow me to do is to do a trim. And so I'm going to lift this up, and I am side saddle sewing. So I'm going to go ahead and use my bar here to assist me as I do this. I want to make sure I'm at a 2, and I want to take this back to a center. So I'm going to change my stitches here and then come right back to my center justified because I don't want to accidentally hit my presser foot and break a needle. Ask me how I know that that can happen. All right, so we are piecing, and since we're going to be intersecting other lines of stitches, I'm not going to worry so much about starting and stopping with a reinforcement. I am going to lift my needle and clip my threads using my automatic thread system, and I've got this lovely, lovely seam. Now I should measure this. Let's see what we got here. I'm pretty sure this looks like 1/4 of an inch. Ooh, it's just inside 1/4 of an inch. And all I did, hopefully, can you all see that? It's just inside. I don't know if you can see this or not. It's just inside, one thread inside. And that was just me. Really, I'm not even sitting in front. I'm to the left of this machine because of the cameras. This is the piece I just stitched. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press it because I always want to set my stitches into the fabric. Doesn't sound like much, but it's really big. Now, because this is a white piece of fabric, and I know that if I was to press this like this, I might actually see that yellow and white fabric on the back side. So what I want to do is I want to press the seam allowance towards my roof line, which is the yellow. So I'm going to press it flat, and then what I'm going to do is, note this is dry, there's no steam on this. Then I'm going to push it over with my finger, okay? And I like to just gently push it open, and then I come back in and I iron it. Now, some people just shove it on over. Well, okay, that's ironing. I guess what I'm doing is pressing. I'm moving it over, and then I'm just adding, oops, and it looks like I pressed that the wrong way. But what I want to do is I want to get this nice and open and really nice and flat. I don't like to add moisture at this point because that's when you can distort a seam, and that can cause you a lot of trouble. Now, excuse me about this. One of the things I found very helpful at this point was to take my, I'm going to move my patterns out of the way here, was to take my rotary cutter and just come in here and trim off my excess at the point, okay? Because that's going to give me a nice smooth triangle line so that I would know where to add my next piece, which is going to be this way. And I want to go just a little bit. Remember, we added and we made that instead of just a 4.5 in length, we made it 5. So let me take you back on over to the machine. So here again, I'm just looking here to make sure I've got that covered. My wrong side or the back is up because you guys all voted and the bold one. So we're doing the bold gold on the top here. And I need to scoot in. I'm going to lower it. Oh, you know what? I don't know if I don't feel comfortable. I want to give myself a good chunk at the top here too. When I open that, I want to make sure I have plenty of it all the way across. All right, going to lower this once again. I'm just using that metal guide on that 1/4 of an inch presser foot. And I'm just going to go ahead and give it a stitch. All right, lift it up. Okay, let's add that. Let's go on over and give this a press. Once again, we're going to go flat. Then I'm just going to open it up while it's hot. You can burn your fingers, so be very, very careful. We don't want any accidents. We don't want that. We want our sewing time to be enjoyable. But here again, I did the starch before I cut my pieces because these are only like 3/4 of an inch wide. We want these to be very, very nice and pretty on our houses. Okay. So I've got this here again. I'm just going to trim this up because I'm a visual person. Look at that. I just gave it enough. But that gives me a nice clean peak. That's what I'm looking for. Okay. Now we're going to add our sky. And once again, like I told you, these are just extras. So we're just going to go ahead and sew some sky here. Excuse me. And let's go back over to this machine. Take you on over with me. And we're just going to scoot it around. Now, I'm not going to worry so much about the bottom. As I get closer to the bottom, you're going to see we're going to have plenty because this gets to be a very small piece that they want us to trim it up to. So I'm not so worried. I do have a little bit of, how do I say it? I have a seam allowance here that I want to make sure goes the right way or the way I want it to go. I don't know if it's the right way. And actually, I must have nicked it a little too deep there. So if I had trimmed this exactly right, I shouldn't see any of the backing fabric as I'm piecing this. That is like one of the big things. Notice I'm not using pins either because I have discovered through the years, I am more accurate if I can visually manipulate it. I do use a stiletto, or I use something to help me get that in, a long pin, a hat pin, any of those kind of things. That just helps speed the process through. But you're going to get really nice intersecting lines here. That's what we're looking for. So let's take this on over. So once again, I'm going to press this flat. Now, here's something you may not think of. Even though this is a blue fabric and this is a yellow, you may actually get a green line that weeps through here. So sometimes you have to watch how light is your light blue sky. That's what you have to watch for. This one is pretty opaque, so I'm not going to worry too much about visibility coming through here, but I am going to go ahead and press this open. Okay, got that one. And then I'm going to come in here and add my last piece. And we're going to get this one. I'll sew this one and then we'll talk just a little bit more here. I did not clip that top, but you're going to see it's going to be put into the seam allowance. So I'm not so worried about it. Oops, I wobbled. This is why Linda shouldn't talk and stitch. Let me see. I might go back. I probably won't rip it out. Oh, I didn't wobble that much. Let me just go back in. What I like to do, if I've made a seam that's too narrow, that can definitely impact it. And so I come back in, I do a little reinforcing, and then I just stitch over where I think I wobbled. It's pretty much the whole center piece there. There we go. And I finished strong, but I'm going to go ahead and just reinforce it here. You know what it is, quilters? We're too close to our project. That's what it is. We need to back away and just enjoy our process. All right, so once again, we're going to press it. I'm just going to gently fold it open. I'm going to give it a nice, good press. Now these, she has you trimming up. And this is the last of the hints that I'm going to give. I just want to make sure I'm going to give you the right measurement. Because she wants this to be, this is the roof. She wants it to be 4 1/4 by 3 1/2. Well, 3 1/2 is not very tall at all. Here's what I like about it. She shows me it's 4 1/4, not 4 1/2 by 3 1/2. So 4 1/4 by 3 1/2. What I like to do at this point is I get a pen that I know I can mark up with. And I'm going to look over here. So 4 1/4 is right there. Okay. It's one little notch past the 4. And what I do is I manipulate this around. The other thing I have to remember is 3 1/2. So here's 1, 2, 3 1/2, which is this line right there. If I need to, and let me grab some, I will use just a little bit of painter's tape because it doesn't damage my ruler, and it's going to give me a visual where it is that I need to be. And of course, with all the humidity, it's decided not to stick. And 4 1/4. There we go. So this then becomes my little window. I do want to make sure that I have at least 1/4 inch. It can be a little less, but I want at least 1/4 inch. I don't know why all of a sudden this is really low tack tape, guys. Okay, so 3.5 by 4 1/4. Hopefully you can see this. And what I'm doing is I'm actually also watching, and I hope you can see this blue line right here. I'm watching my plaids because remember, I decided to use a plaid. The other thing I'm going to look for is if this is 4 1/4, I'm going to go over 2 and probably just a few eighths to get this centered, okay? So that's where I'm looking over here. Here's 2 and just a few eighths. I don't know. It's a very small number, but I'm also looking at my little, these are my 1/8 lines, and I put that on one of those plaid lines that's running right down. And then I take my friction pen. So first of all, I'm going to look over here, and it's like, I don't have very much blue. And I have a lot of blue over here. So I might just scooch this over visually. Maybe it was a piecing thing. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe I need to take this up just a hair and have a little bit more at the top to make this a little bit wider. And then what I like to do is just make some tick marks here. This is going to help me know exactly where to line up my ruler as I come in here. And then I can bring my ruler right back in on those lines and give it a good slice. Okay, remember there's going to be that 1/4 of an inch, and then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do the 3.5 by 4 1/4. And that is how I got the top done. Ta-da! For my house. And if I line this up right, my plaids should be fairly close. Check that out. Isn't that going to be fun, guys? So that's how I get these pieces to going. And then, all right, after you get your pieces all done, you're going to have to put some windows in and some doors. Now, here's my recommendation for these. Get a big chunk of fusible web. Let's say this is the door. Okay, here again, we've got itty bitty measurements, guys, itty bitty measurements. So our doors are only going to be 2.5 by 1.5. That is super little, okay? So here's what I'm going to tell you. If you've got your fusible web and it's fused to your fabric, you're going to notice that this is slick, okay? So what I recommend doing here again, I'm just going to use my friction pen. And on this one, I would do, it's 1.5 by 2.5. So I'm going to do 1.5. Hopefully I can see this, up by 2.5. Okay, got it. Then I rotate it around 1.5 by 2.5. And then either I'm going to use a pair of shears. This is where I think I got a better cut because I found it was starting to fray because it was sliding. And I ended up usually with like a trapezoid as opposed to having a nice sharp door. Okay, the other thing I'm going to tell you when it comes to doors and windows, I'm going to bring my house back down here, is when it comes to putting on your actual doors and getting this out. Once again, anytime you work with fusible, here's our fabric, score it in the middle, okay? Because you don't want to be trying to get the edge of that paper off. No, score in the middle, peel from the inside to the outside. Then layer this up and say, is it a yellow door that I like? And I would, once again, just use my ruler here and say, well, this, of course, is going to be a 4 1/4. That's a hard measurement to find a center, but it gives you somewhat, if you know that 2 is right on the side. But who says your door has to be centered? You could definitely come over here. Just make sure you leave that 1/4 of an inch so that you have a way to get a seam in there. But sometimes I found the bolder the choice, I almost liked it a little better. And the same thing with the windows. I recommend laying out your fabrics, laying everything down and around, and then seeing if it's what you want. Now, you can cut little squares, and you can use your rotary cutter again. This one almost looks like a rectangle. I need to do a little trimming, and you do run into this by using scissors, but you can add little windows that are square. You can take a long line of fusible fused, excuse me, and fold it in half. Hopefully you can see there's a half. And then all I did was cut a arc. Now I have that elliptical fan light. You can put it above the door. You can put it in the attic. You can put it one above each of the windows. They have to come smaller though. But you can see, oh, that almost looks too rectangular. I might have to come in. It's just like making Valentines or hearts. Come in and make it just a little shorter, just a little tighter. Here we go. Boom. All right. And you can definitely, it's just like playing with paper dolls, guys. Anybody remember doing that in a time, once upon a time? So let me just share with you once again, this is what we're going to share with putting all them decorative stitches down so you get a seaside that is super charming. This is what I showed you how to create today. In fact, I was going to use this gray because I thought it looked kind of Williamsburg. And then I thought, you know what? I need to add a little bit more punch, and that's where I ended up with this. And you're going to notice here that we have that 1/4 of an inch on both sides, some of it generous. But once again, I didn't do mine in rows like she advised. I did it individually because I wanted to make sure that I could move these around. So I got the house placed in the right spot. I am super excited to be a part of the great Baby Lock Education team. And I'm super excited that we get to spend our January sharing all of our fun ways to create this row house. Now, whether you're making a bag, whether you're making a quilt, whether you want to maybe do something super fun with just one skinny block, give it a try, guys. And I hope you are able to have some fun and learn some new techniques from all of the education team. If you're not a member of Linda Be Creative, make sure you join. My goal is to give you some hints and suggestions as to how I did some of these things. So that will be a free download, but you have to be in the Linda Be Creative group. There is 3 questions you need to answer, and the downloads to all of my freebies are in that group.
Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more creative inspiration.